Hey gang, it's Keith and Nick here. Today we want to talk a little bit about a common call and emails we're receiving about folks that have outside 401ks. Maybe they're approaching retirement or maybe they're not, but they want to know, is their allocation appropriate? They've seen declines in their balances frequently. So Nick, can you kind of share some common things and themes that we're seeing that might give people some tool set to go to work and think about how they communicate with us or their advisors?
I think the first thing, for these times always bring, it seems it's funny how people kind of forget they have a 401k. It seems like, it runs in the background, you contribute to it, you kind of forget, and then these happen, you're like, oh, I should probably check my statement out.
Yeah,
and you look at the statement and it's, whoa, I didn't expect to see that.
The 401k became the 201k.
Yeah. So what we talk about though is, what do you do, now? Guys, what's the reference to now? I think it really depends on where you are in the investment cycle, obviously. For a lot of times, if you are a younger client, now maybe time you talk about maybe upping your allocation. How much you contribute. If you're contributing 6%, can you move it to 7%? Can you move it to 8%? Just how do you kind of lean into it? We call that, lean into the plan at this point in time.
As those investments are in decline, thinking that contribution ends up buying, quite simply, more things at depressed value.
That's it. So I think that, if you are still in accumulation phase, I think that would be tactical thing I would do. Number one is use this time to lean into that, to consider upping your contribution. But what we're seeing probably more than that is, pre-retirees who are coming in with this and alarmed by the fact that this just derail their capacity to retire. So they're coming in and, what do I do now that my 401k is down 30-35%? And did that impact my ability to retire? Am I going to have to work more? So I think with that, first understand your 401k is context of your entire plan. You need to have somebody yourself kind of lay it out and understand the role it's serving for you. Oftentimes, we get so hyper-focused on this one thing, we forget about maybe our savings account at the bank and how these things work together, and we're trying to organize it piecemeal. We're looking at one thing, hyper-focused, instead of looking at the whole picture. Right. So I think first step would be get the whole picture lined out and understand how these things are working together. Once you have that, at a tactical level, once you're in the portfolio, what I'd be looking for is, first understand, by nature, 401k is a really limited tool set. Relative to what the independent space like we have access to over 30,000 investments. A typical 401k probably has 30. So when you have that level of limitation, you understand that maybe what you can do is you're going to be a little bit handcuffed in that. One of the considerations that investors can make, though, is first understand, does your plan allow for in-service withdrawals? So a lot of plans, those are plan specific, so there is no generic, if you are this, you qualify. But you reach out to your HR department, your plan administrator, and ask them, am I eligible for an in-service withdrawal? Because what that will do is allow you the capacity maybe to look for other options outside of those 30. Because
particularly if you're over 55.
Particularly if you're over 55, because what we find is, really 401ks are limited to stocks and bonds. We both know the issues with both right now. I mean,
rates
really
are zero and stocks are volatile.
So
it's pretty easy to see.
If your tool set is that, you are limited. Your outcomes are going to be limited such that. So I think first step would understand is that an option for me to have an in-service withdrawal? If it is, then you need to talk to your financial advisor, your planner, to understand, okay, what portion do I need to consider and what role is that going to serve? I think the ideal of moving from stocks and bonds to more stocks and bonds isn't the best play, but moving from stocks and bonds to a non-correlated or less correlated asset, maybe an income-producing asset, it would be a good move for you to make. If that's not an option, if you can't get to an in-service withdrawal, I think the next level would be understanding kind of the makeup of the products in there. And by and large, most 401ks have what are called target date funds. And really, we find there's two types of investors in 401k. The one who will select a target date because that was the easiest selection that you lined up, and it's probably the most prudent to say, I'm retiring in 2025, I'm going to have a 2025. The other investor, though, what they typically do is every year they get their annual report and they say, this one was up a lot last year, I'm going into that. Typically what that means is they have a lot more risk. The target date probably has a lot more bond exposure than they think they have. So what I would suggest in these moments now is to understand what the makeup is. If you don't have the interest in understanding, at least talk to an advisor who understands what they are, and consider maybe, repositioning some of those. Right now, if you have something that's heavy in bonds, it's probably done relatively okay relative to the broad markets. You may consider selling some to lean into it as well to make up some lost ground, buy some more growth exposure, or vice versa.
To your comment about the in-service withdrawals, many times we see that advisors recommend it outside and use something similar that's in their 401k, like they move out a mutual fund.
Change it to a different name.
Yeah, and those aren't really productive. They might be productive for the advisor, but they're not really productive for it. Unless you've really kind of leaned into, and I like that terminology, you know what your income goal is, and you're buying the tools that you need to accomplish that end game. The idea of just moving for the sake of moving, it might give you a few things in terms of access to an IRA. That's called a rollover when you do that to an IRA. But I think it's most valuable when you're using it to complete the tool set that you need to aim to get that.
Move toward your goal.
Your
ultimate goal of income.
You're not just moving or adding accounts just to do something.
So I think really that would be the high level summary. If you're accumulating, talk about your contributions, maybe consider upping them. I'll look into in-service withdrawals because there are more tool sets outside of a 401k by and large. And lastly, understand the makeup, and if you have to make do with what you have, talk to an advisor about making sure it's meeting your needs, whether you need to reduce risk or maybe you need to try to target higher risk because you need more return.
You've got to kind of
understand, but ultimately it all comes back to your goal. Do you understand what your goal is, and are you on pace to get there?
And that's where I think the summation is. Many people have used their 401ks as piggy banks that go up and down. And really the intention of a 401k has always been is a pension replacement, an opportunity to create an income check that's predictable. That's really how we'd advise it, is create a personal pension out of that 401k, organize it in such a way that you can count on it and understand how it works. And I think you'll certainly produce a lot more confidence for you and your family.